Hello, and welcome to Boring History for Sleep, the place where we explore the less exciting, more mundane corners of the past to help you relax, unwind, and drift off into a peaceful slumber. Tonight, we're not sailing on epic voyages or raiding distant shores. Instead, we're settling into the quiet, repetitive world of a Viking longship builder. Let's leave the drama of the sagas behind and find comfort in the ordinary, everyday tasks that made those famous ships possible. So, get comfortable, close your eyes, and let the gentle rhythm of history lull you to sleep. Our story begins in a quiet fjord, nestled between steep, pine-covered hills. The air is cool and smells of salt, damp earth, and freshly cut wood. Here, in a small, sheltered clearing near the water's edge, lives Bjorn, a master shipwright. His life isn't one of grand adventure, but of quiet dedication and immense skill, passed down through generations. Bjorn's day starts not with the sound of a battle horn, but with the gentle light of dawn filtering through the smoke hole of his longhouse. He rises slowly, his joints stiff from years of labor. His first task is simple, stoking the embers of the central hearth back to life. He adds a few pieces of dried peat, blowing gently until a small flame catches. The fire provides a low, comforting warmth against the morning chill. He shares a simple breakfast with his family, usually a warm porridge of barley or oats, perhaps with a few dried berries for sweetness. The conversation is minimal, a few soft words about the weather or the day's chores. There is no rush, only the steady, predictable start to another day. After his meal, Bjorn walks the short distance to his open-air workshop. It's not much more than a collection of timber, tools, and a half-finished hull resting on sturdy wooden supports. His first task of the day is always the same, selecting the right wood. This isn't a quick decision. He walks into the nearby forest, a place he knows as well as his own home. He's looking for tall, straight oak trees for the keel and planks, and naturally curved branches for the ribs of the ship. He runs his calloused hand over the bark, inspecting each tree with a practiced eye, noting its grain, its age, and any imperfections. He might spend a good hour just observing, walking from tree to tree, making mental notes. There's a quiet satisfaction in this process, a slow, methodical connection to the raw materials of his craft. Once a suitable tree is chosen, the real work begins. But it's a slow, arduous process. Felling a large oak with the simple axes of the time takes hours, sometimes days. It's a rhythmic, repetitive motion. The thud of the axe head biting into the wood, the spray of wood chips, the steady breathing of the woodsman. Thud, chop, pause, thud, chop, pause. The sound echoes softly through the quiet forest, a constant, predictable beat. After the tree is felled, the next challenge is transporting the massive log back to the building site. This is often a community effort, with several men and a team of oxen pulling the log on rollers. It's slow, heavy work, punctuated by shouted instructions and the creaking of wood. Back at the workshop, the log must be split into planks. Bjorn doesn't use a saw. Instead, he and his apprentices use wedges and mallets. They carefully drive wooden wedges along the grain of the log, slowly and painstakingly, splitting it into long, even boards. This method, called cleaving, is incredibly labor-intensive, but ensures the planks are exceptionally strong, as it follows the natural fibers of the wood. The sound is a dull, repetitive thumping. Tap, 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 crack, tap, 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 crack. The rhythm is steady, almost meditative. Hour after hour, the log is slowly transformed into a neat stack of rough-hewn planks. Now comes the shaping. Bjorn takes a single plank and secures it to his workbench. He picks up his adze, a tool resembling a curved axe. For the rest of the afternoon, his world shrinks to this single piece of wood. He stands over it, his body moving in a familiar, practiced rhythm. He shaves off thin curls of wood, smoothing the rough surface, shaping the plank to the precise curvature needed for the ship's hull. Shave, sweep, shave, sweep. The soft scraping sound is the only noise, accompanied by the gentle rustle of wood shavings falling to the ground. He doesn't measure with a ruler. He measures with his eyes, his hands, and a simple string line. His movements are efficient, born of thousands of hours of repetition. There is no excitement here, only focus and the slow, gradual emergence of a perfect plank from a rough piece of timber. As the sun begins to dip lower, casting long shadows across the fjord, it's time for a different kind of task. Caulking. The gaps between the planks of the ship must be sealed to make it watertight. Bjorn uses wool, soaked in pine tar. He takes handfuls of greasy, tar-soaked wool and patiently, methodically, forces it into every seam of the hull using a small wooden mallet and a caulking iron. It's a sticky, messy, and tedious job. The smell of the hot pine tar is thick and pungent. The work is slow and meticulous. Inch by inch, he works his way along the length of the ship, ensuring every gap is perfectly sealed. His hands become black with tar, but his movements are sure and steady. It's a job that requires immense patience, a quiet determination to see it through to the end. Nearby, an apprentice might be tasked with making rivets. This is another endlessly repetitive job. He heats a small iron rod in a charcoal forge, using bellows to keep the fire hot. The rhythmic whoosh of the bellows is a constant background noise. Whoosh, glow, whoosh, glow. When the rod is glowing red hot, he hammers it on a small anvil, shaping one end into a head. Then he cuts it to length and starts the process all over again. Hundreds, even thousands of these rivets are needed for a single longship. The clanging of the hammer is regular and unchanging, a metallic heartbeat in the workshop. Clang, clang, clang. Pause, clang, clang, pause. Each rivet is almost identical to the last. As evening approaches, the tools are cleaned and put away. Bjorn inspects the day's progress. He might run his hand along a newly placed plank, feeling for any imperfections. There's no grand celebration, just a quiet nod of satisfaction. He has moved one small step closer to finishing the ship. It might take a year, or even longer, to complete, but that doesn't matter. What matters is the steady, daily progress, the patient application of skill. Bjorn returns to his longhouse as the sky darkens. The air is now filled with the smells of a cooking fire and roasting meat. The evening meal is another simple, hearty affair. The family gathers around the hearth, its flickering light casting dancing shadows on the wooden walls. They might share stories, but not of heroic deeds. They talk of the day's work, the quality of the timber, the behavior of the oxen, the weather forecast for tomorrow. The conversation is gentle, practical, and soothing. After the meal, there is little to do. Perhaps a child's toy needs mending, or a tool handle needs smoothing. Bjorn might sit by the fire, sharpening his adze on a whetstone. The gentle rhythmic scrape of steel on stone is a final, calming sound to end the day. Scrape, scrape, scrape. The motion is slow and deliberate. As the fire dies down to glowing embers, the family prepares for sleep. They settle onto their simple wooden beds, covered with animal skins and wool blankets. The longhouse grows quiet, the only sounds being the gentle crackle of the dying fire and the soft breathing of the sleepers. Outside, the fjord is still, the water reflecting the stars. For Bjorn, the shipwright, the day ends as it began, in quiet simplicity. He closes his eyes, his mind not on battles or voyages, but on the grain of a plank, the curve of a hull, and the steady, reliable work that awaits him in the morning. Sleep now, and let the mundane, comforting rhythms of the shipwright's life guide you into a deep and restful peace. The thud of the axe, the scrape of the adze, the clanging of the hammer, all fading into the background as you drift off. There is no need to think, no need to worry, just the gentle, boring, and wonderfully soothing sounds of history. Good night. We re-stepping back in time to explore one of the most famous networks in history, the Silk Road. But we're not just talking about dates and dynasties. We're diving deep into what it was really like to live, travel, and trade along these ancient routes. What did people eat? Where did they sleep? And what dangers lurked around the corner? So, pack your bags and get ready for an epic journey, because this is the story of daily life on the Silk Road. First things first, let's get one thing straight. The Silk Road wasn't a single road. It was a vast, sprawling network of trade routes connecting the East and West, stretching over 4,000 miles. For centuries, it was the world's most important artery for goods, ideas, religions, and cultures. And at the heart of it all were the people who braved this incredible journey. So, who were these travelers? They were a diverse bunch. You had merchants, of course, leading long caravans of camels, laden with precious cargo. But you also had diplomats on official missions, monks and missionaries spreading their faith, soldiers guarding the routes, and even entertainers and adventurers seeking fortune and fame. Each person had their own story, their own reason for undertaking such a perilous expedition. Imagine you're a merchant preparing for a trip. This isn't a weekend getaway. Preparations could take months. You'd need to gather your goods. Maybe you're trading silk from China for Roman glassware, or spices from India for Persian carpets. Then, you'd have to assemble your team. You'd need cameleers, guides who knew the terrain, translators who could navigate the dozens of languages spoken along the way, and guards to protect you from bandits. Your most crucial companion, the Bactrian camel. These two-humped marvels were the all-terrain vehicles of the ancient world. They could carry hundreds of pounds, go for days without water, and withstand the extreme temperatures of the desert, from scorching heat to freezing cold. A caravan could consist of anywhere from a dozen to over 1,000 camels, a slow-moving city snaking its way across the landscape. Now, let's talk about the journey itself. It was long, grueling, and incredibly dangerous. A one-way trip could take years. Travelers faced some of the most unforgiving environments on Earth. They had to cross vast, waterless deserts like the Taklamakan, whose name ominously means go in and you won't come out. They navigated treacherous mountain passes in the Pamirs, the roof of the world, where altitude sickness and sudden snowstorms were constant threats. And then there were the human dangers. Bandits were a persistent problem, hiding in mountain passes or remote desert areas, waiting to ambush caravans. Political instability was also a risk. A friendly kingdom could suddenly become hostile, closing its borders or demanding exorbitant taxes. To survive, you needed to be smart, resilient, and maybe a little bit lucky. So, after a long day of trekking through dust and sun, where did everyone rest? The answer lies in one of the most brilliant innovations of the Silk Road, the caravanserai. These were roadside inns, essentially ancient motels, spaced about a day's journey apart. They were fortified compounds with a large central courtyard for the animals and rooms for the travelers around the perimeter. Inside a caravanserai, the world came alive. The air would be thick with the smell of cooking food, animal dung, and exotic spices. You'd hear a babble of languages: Sogdian, Persian, Chinese, Turkic, Arabic. It was here that merchants would rest, resupply, and, most importantly, trade. Deals were struck, goods were exchanged, and news and stories from distant lands were shared over a warm meal and a cup of tea. These weren't just rest stops. They were vibrant hubs of cultural exchange. A merchant from Samarkand might learn about Buddhism from a monk from India, while a diplomat from Byzantium could be introduced to the art of papermaking from a Chinese artisan. The caravanserai was the social network of the ancient world, a place where ideas traveled just as freely as silk and spices. What about the food? It was as diverse as the people. Depending on where you were, your diet would change dramatically. In the oasis towns of Central Asia, you'd feast on fresh fruits like melons, grapes, and pomegranates. You'd eat flatbreads, mutton stew, and pilaf, a rice dish cooked with meat and carrots that is still a staple in the region today. Further east, you'd find noodles, dumplings, and steamed buns. Food was not just for sustenance. It was a taste of a new culture at every stop. Water, however, was the most precious commodity, carefully rationed and always on the traveler's mind. But life wasn't all trade and travel. The Silk Road was a conduit for so much more. Religions like Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam spread along these routes, carried by missionaries and pilgrims. Buddhist monks from India journeyed to China, carrying sacred texts and establishing monasteries in places like the Mogao caves near Dunhuang, leaving behind a breathtaking legacy of art and devotion. Technology and ideas also flowed in both directions. Papermaking, gunpowder, and the compass made their way from China to the West, transforming society forever. In return, things like grape cultivation, glassmaking techniques, and even musical instruments traveled eastward. This incredible exchange enriched every civilization it touched, creating a connected world long before the internet. So what happened to it all? By the 15th and 16th centuries, the age of the Silk Road began to wane. The rise of powerful maritime empires, like the Portuguese and the Spanish, opened up new sea routes to the east. It became faster, cheaper, and safer to transport goods by ship. The old land routes, with their deserts, mountains, and bandits, gradually fell into disuse. The once bustling caravanserais fell silent, and many of the great oasis cities declined. But the legacy of the Silk Road endures. It's not just in the ancient ruins or the museum artifacts. It's in the food we eat, the languages we speak, and the interconnectedness of our modern world. It's a powerful reminder that for thousands of years, people have been driven by a desire to explore, to connect, and to understand one another. The daily lives of those merchants, monks, and adventurers laid the groundwork for the globalized world we live in today. Next time you sip a cup of tea, wear a silk shirt, or even use a piece of paper, take a moment to think about the incredible journey those things once made. Think about the camel caravans, the bustling markets, and the brave souls who risked everything to connect the East and the West. The spirit of the Silk Road is a story of human courage, curiosity, and the enduring power of connection. Let your mind drift back in time, back to an era of whispering sands and starlit nights. Tonight, we're journeying along the ancient Silk Road, not as historians with maps and dates, but as quiet observers, listening to the sleepy stories carried on the desert wind. Imagine a world without highways or instant messages. A world connected by a sprawling network of pathways, stretching over 4,000 miles. This was the Silk Road. It wasn't a single road, but a web of routes, like veins on a leaf, connecting the mighty Roman Empire in the west with the mysterious Han Dynasty in the east. For over 1,500 years, this was the world's lifeline. Let's begin our journey in Chang'an, the grand capital of ancient China, the easternmost heart of the Silk Road. Picture the sun rising, casting a golden glow over curved temple roofs and bustling city gates. Here, the air hums with anticipation. A caravan is preparing to depart. Camels, the true ships of the desert, are being loaded. They groan softly under the weight of their precious cargo. What are they carrying? Bales of shimmering silk. Of course. Silk so fine it feels like water flowing through your fingers. To the rest of the world, its creation was a closely guarded secret, a magical thread spun by Chinese artisans. But it's not just silk. There's also delicate porcelain, fragrant tea, and intricately carved jade. Each item is a piece of a story, ready to be told thousands of miles away. The caravan leader, a seasoned merchant with a sun-weathered face and eyes that have seen countless horizons, gives the signal. The great gates of the city swing open, and the long line of camels and men begins its slow, rhythmic walk westward. The sounds of the city fade, replaced by the soft padding of camel feet and the gentle clinking of bells tied to their harnesses. A sound that will be their constant companion for months to come. Their first great challenge is the Taklamakan Desert. Its name whispers a warning. You can get in, but you can never get out. By day, the sun is a relentless furnace, and the sand dunes ripple and shift like a golden ocean. The horizon blurs in the heat, creating mirages of shimmering lakes that offer false hope. The travelers wrap their faces in cloth, their world shrinking to the camel in front and the endless sand ahead. But when night falls, the desert transforms. The scorching heat gives way to a profound, chilling cold. Above, the sky becomes a velvet blanket, so clear and so vast that the stars feel close enough to touch. The Milky Way is a brilliant river of light, a celestial road guiding them. The travelers gather around a small fire, its flames dancing and casting long shadows. They share their meager meal-dried flatbread dates and sips of precious water. Here, under the immense silence of the desert sky, stories are shared. A merchant from Persia might tell a tale of brave heroes and clever genies. A Sogdian trader, a master of the road, might share news from a distant city or a funny story about a stubborn camel. A young guard, on his first journey, listens with wide eyes, his imagination filled with the wonders and dangers that lie ahead. These stories are as vital as food and water, weaving a bond of camaraderie and easing the loneliness of the long journey. They whisper their hopes and fears into the crackling fire, their words carried away by the cool night air before they settled down to sleep, huddled together for warmth and safety. After weeks of hardship, a green line appears on the horizon. An oasis. Places like Dunhuang or Turpan are not just sources of water. They are vibrant hubs of life. Imagine stepping out of the stark, empty desert into a bustling town. The air is filled with the scent of ripe melons, sizzling lamb, and damp earth. The sound is a symphony of different languages, of merchants haggling in the marketplace, of children laughing, and of music played on strange and wonderful instruments. In the oasis market, the world comes together. Our caravan from China unloads its silk and tea, which are eagerly bought by traders heading further west. In return, they load their camels with new treasures. From India come fragrant spices like cinnamon and pepper, precious gems, and cotton textiles. From Persia come magnificent carpets with intricate designs, shimmering glassware, and sweet-smelling perfumes. And from the Roman Empire, there's gold, silver, and fine wool. This isn't just trade. It's a great exchange of cultures. But it wasn't only goods that traveled the Silk Road. Ideas, beliefs, and knowledge flowed just as freely. Buddhist monks from India, carrying sacred texts, walked these same paths, sharing their philosophy of peace and compassion. They found refuge in places like the Mogao caves near Dunhuang, where for centuries, artists and devotees carved thousands of shrines into a cliff face. Inside, protected from the desert sun, they painted breathtaking murals depicting celestial beings, scenes from daily life, and stories of enlightenment. Imagine sitting in the cool, quiet darkness of one of these caves, the flickering light of a butter lamp illuminating a serene, smiling face painted 1,000 years ago. The air is still, filled with a sense of devotion that transcends time. Let's continue our journey westward, crossing treacherous mountain passes like the Pamirs, the roof of the world. Here, the air is thin and cold, and the path is a narrow ledge clinging to the side of a sheer cliff. The camels step carefully, their bells echoing in the vast, silent emptiness. The travelers are humbled by the raw power and majesty of nature. Finally, after months, maybe even years, our caravan reaches the great cities of the West, like Samarkand or Bukhara. Here, the architecture is different. Grand mosques and madrasas are covered in stunning blue tiles that sparkle in the sun. The air is rich with the aroma of spices and roasting coffee. In these cities, East truly meets West. You might see a Roman merchant examining a bolt of Chinese silk, a Persian scholar studying a scroll of Indian mathematics, and a Sogdian artist learning new techniques from a Chinese painter. Imagine the daily life of a family living in Samarkand. Perhaps the father is a metalworker, hammering intricate patterns into silver bowls. The mother might be weaving a carpet, her fingers flying across the loom, creating a paradise of flowers and birds with colored wool. Their children play in a courtyard filled with the scent of jasmine and roses, hearing stories not just of their own people, but of faraway lands brought to them by the endless stream of travelers passing through their city. Their world is a rich tapestry, woven from 100 different threads. Even the food tells a story. The noodles they eat might have originated in China. The spices in their stew could be from India, the apricots from a local orchard, and the bread recipe from Persia. Every meal is a small celebration of the interconnected world the Silk Road created. As the sun sets over the blue domes of Samarkand, the call to prayer echoes through the streets. A sense of peace descends. The day's work is done. Families gather, merchants close their stalls, and the city settles into a gentle rhythm. The stars come out, the same stars that watched over the caravan in the heart of the desert. The Silk Road was more than just a trade route. It was a bridge between worlds, a conduit for dreams, and a testament to the human desire to connect, to explore, and to share. It shows us that even in a world of vast deserts and towering mountains, people have always found a way to reach out to one another, sharing not just their goods, but their stories, their art, and their humanity. And now, as our journey comes to an end, let the gentle echoes of the Silk Road lull you to sleep. Hear the soft tinkle of camel bells, feel the warmth of a desert campfire, and smell the faint aroma of distant spices. The stories of the Silk Road are endless, and they will be here to welcome you again, whenever you wish to return. Thank you. Have you ever stood in a museum, staring at an ancient piece of pottery, a finely woven tapestry, or a delicate piece of jewelry, and wondered who made it? We often focus on the grand narratives of history, the kings, the battles, the empires. But what about the quiet lives, the unsung heroes, who literally built the world around them? Today, we're pulling back the curtain of time to explore the silent, yet profound, world of ancient artisans. These were the men and women whose hands shaped not just clay, wood, and metal, but the very fabric of their civilizations. Imagine a bustling marketplace in ancient Rome, or a quiet workshop along the Nile. The air is thick with the smell of sawdust, hot metal, and wet clay. This was the domain of the artisan. Their lives were far from the epic poems and grand monuments we study. Yet without them, those monuments wouldn't exist. They were the backbone of society, the creators of both the mundane and the magnificent. From the simple bowl a farmer ate from to the intricate golden death mask of a pharaoh, every object tells a story of its maker. So, who were these people? For the most part, they were anonymous. History, written by the elite, rarely recorded the names of potters, weavers, or masons. They were often born into their trade, learning from their parents in a tradition passed down through generations. A blacksmith's son would learn the secrets of the forge, the rhythm of the hammer, and the language of fire and steel. A weaver's daughter would master the loom, her fingers dancing across the threads to create patterns that might tell a story, display a family's wealth, or simply keep someone warm. Their workshops were often part of their homes, blurring the line between work and life. Picture a small, sun-drenched courtyard in Greece. A potter sits at his wheel, a lump of clay spinning before him. His children play nearby, perhaps mimicking his movements with their own small pieces of clay. This wasn't just a job, it was a way of life, a community, and an identity. The skills they possessed were highly specialized and deeply respected within their communities, even if they weren't famous. A good stonemason was essential for building a temple, a skilled carpenter for constructing ships, and a talented jeweler for adorning the powerful. Let's take a closer look at a specific craft: glassmaking in the Roman Empire. The Romans were masters of glass. They didn't invent it, but they perfected it and made it accessible like never before. Before them, glass was a luxury item, as precious as gems. But Roman artisans developed the revolutionary technique of glass blowing around 50 BC. Suddenly, they could produce glass vessels quickly and cheaply. This changed everything. Glass became a common household item. Windows made of glass started appearing in the homes of the wealthy, letting in light while keeping out the cold. Think about the impact of that simple innovation. It literally changed how people experienced their homes and the world outside. The artisan who first blew a bubble of glass into a perfect bottle did not know they were starting a revolution. But their quiet ingenuity had a massive impact that we still benefit from today. But their lives weren't always easy. Being an artisan was hard physical work. A stonemason spent his days quarrying and carving massive blocks of stone, his body aching under the strain. A blacksmith toiled in the sweltering heat of the forge, risking burns and injury every day. Many suffered from health problems related to their trade. Skeletons of ancient artisans often show signs of arthritis, strained muscles, and lung damage from inhaling dust and fumes. They poured their health and their energy into their work, leaving a piece of themselves in every object they created. Furthermore, their social status was complex. In some societies, like ancient Egypt, skilled artisans who worked for the pharaoh or the temples could achieve a high status and live comfortably. The craftsmen who built and decorated the tombs in the Valley of the Kings, for example, lived in a dedicated village, Deir el-Medina. Archaeologists have uncovered their homes, their letters, and even their laundry lists, giving us an incredibly intimate look into their daily lives. We know they were literate, they were paid in rations of grain and beer, and they even organized the first recorded labor strike in history when their payments were late. These weren't just anonymous workers. They were real people with families, frustrations, and a strong sense of their own worth. In other cultures, like ancient Rome, the view was more mixed. Manual labor was often looked down upon by the educated elite. The philosopher Seneca wrote that, while we may admire the statues of gods, we tend to despise the sculptors who made them. It's a strange paradox, isn't it? Society depended on these artisans for nearly everything, yet often held them in low esteem. They were simultaneously essential and invisible. Despite this, they found ways to express their identity and pride. Sometimes, they left subtle marks on their work. A potter might press a unique thumbprint into the base of a pot. A mason might carve a tiny, hidden symbol on a stone block that only he would know was there. These weren't signatures in the modern sense, but they were a way of saying, I was here. I made this. In some rare cases, we do find names. On a beautiful piece of Greek pottery, you might see the words, Exekias, painted me, a proud declaration from one of the most famous vase painters of his time. These moments are thrilling for historians because they bridge the vast gap of time and connect us directly to an individual. The materials they worked with also tell a story. The trade routes that brought lapis lazuli from Afghanistan to Egypt, or silk from China to Rome, were the lifelines of the ancient world. An artisan didn't just work with local wood or clay. They were connected to a global network of commerce and exchange. When a Roman jeweler worked with a piece of amber, they were holding something that had traveled thousands of miles from the Baltic coast. This interconnectedness is woven into the very objects they made. Each piece is a map of its world. Think about the legacy they've left behind. It's not just in museums. The techniques they developed were passed down, refined, and are still in use today. Modern ceramicists still use a potter's wheel that would be recognizable to an ancient Egyptian. Jewelers still use many of the same tools and methods for setting stones as their Roman counterparts. This continuity is incredible. It's a living tradition that connects us directly to these silent artisans of the past. Their knowledge, honed over countless hours of patient work, has not been lost. When we look at the ruins of Pompeii, we see more than just buildings. We see the work of the masons who laid the stones, the painters who decorated the walls with vibrant frescoes, and the mosaic artists who created intricate floors, one tiny tile at a time. These weren't just decorations. They were the expressions of a vibrant culture, all brought to life by the hands of artisans. Their work allows us to walk through an ancient city and feel its pulse. We can imagine the baker sliding loaves into an oven, still blackened with soot, or a family gathering in a room adorned with scenes from mythology. The artisans are the ones who make history tangible. Their lives were a testament to human creativity, resilience, and the deep-seated need to make things. To take raw materials from the earth and transform them into something useful, beautiful, or both. They didn't write down their philosophies or lead armies into battle, but their contribution to the human story is just as significant. They crafted the stage upon which history played out. They built the homes, forged the tools, wove the clothes, and created the art that defined their age. Their lives may have been quiet, but their legacy is anything but. It speaks to us across centuries, in the curve of a vase, the glint of a gold earring, and the solid strength of a stone wall. So, the next time you're in a museum, or even just using a ceramic mug for your coffee, take a moment. Think about the hands that might have made its ancient ancestor. Think about the quiet concentration, the years of practice, the calloused fingers, and the creative spark. In our world of mass production, it's a powerful reminder of the value of craftsmanship and the human touch. The artisans of antiquity may have been silent, but if we learn to look closely, their work speaks volumes. They are the quiet, unsung voices of history, and their story is one worth listening to. Have you ever stood in a silent, ancient place and felt a whisper from the past? A sense that stories are embedded in the very stones beneath your feet. Today, we're embarking on a journey, not to bustling tourist spots, but to the quiet corners of the world, where forgotten cultures once thrived. We're going to peel back the layers of time and listen to the tranquil tales of lives lived long ago. Discovering the hidden heartbeat of our shared human history, let's step into a world of mystery and wonder. Our first stop takes us to the windswept Orkney Islands, off the northern coast of Scotland. Here, older than Stonehenge, lies Skara Brae. For nearly 5,000 years, this Neolithic village was buried beneath sand dunes, perfectly preserved until a storm revealed its secrets in 1850. Walking through these stone houses, you can almost see the people who lived here. These weren't primitive cave dwellers. They were sophisticated builders, farmers, and artisans. Look at the layout. The houses are connected by covered alleyways, a smart design to protect them from the harsh Orkney weather. Inside each home, you'll find stone furniture, dressers, beds, and a central hearth that was the heart of the home. Imagine families gathered around the fire, sharing food and stories, the flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. They used decorative pottery and crafted intricate jewelry from bone and stone. These weren't just survivors. They were a community with a rich cultural life. But around 2500 BC, they vanished. Why did they leave? Was it a sudden climate shift, a change in their society? The mystery of Skara Brae is as compelling as the lives it preserves. From the chilly north, let's journey south, to the sun-drenched canyons of the American Southwest. Tucked into sheer cliff faces are the incredible dwellings of the ancestral Puebloans. You might know them as the Anasazi. Mesa Verde, in Colorado, is perhaps the most famous example. Imagine living in a city carved directly into a cliff, hundreds of feet above the canyon floor. These weren't just simple shelters. They were complex, multi-story apartment buildings. Cliff Palace, for example, had around 150 rooms and 23 kivas, which are circular subterranean chambers used for ceremonies. Life here would have been a vertical dance. People would climb hand and toe holds carved into the rock just to get home. They were expert farmers, cultivating corn, beans, and squash on the mesa tops above. They were also incredible astronomers, aligning their buildings with the movements of the sun and stars to track the seasons for planting and harvesting. Their pottery is renowned for its beautiful black on white geometric designs. Yet, by the end of the 13th century, they had abandoned these magnificent cliff cities. Decades of drought, resource depletion, and social conflict are thought to be the reasons. They didn't disappear. Their descendants are the Pueblo peoples of today, like the Hopi and Zuni, who carried their traditions forward. But the cliff dwellings themselves stand as silent, breathtaking monuments to a lost way of life. Now, let's cross the Pacific to Southeast Asia, deep within the dense jungles of Cambodia. While everyone knows Angkor Wat, fewer have heard of its predecessor, the city of Kokor. For a brief, dazzling period in the 10th century, Kokor was the capital of the mighty Khmer Empire. King Jayavarman IV moved the capital here, and in just a couple of decades, a monumental city rose from the jungle. The centerpiece is Prasat Tom, a staggering 7-tiered pyramid that stands over 100 feet tall. It looks more like a Mayan temple than a classic Angkorian structure. Exploring Kokor feels like being in an adventure movie. Temples and statues are wrapped in the serpentine roots of giant trees. For centuries, this city was almost entirely swallowed by the jungle, making it difficult and dangerous to access. It was a lost city in the truest sense. The art and architecture here are unique, more dynamic and expressive than what came later. But after its brief blaze of glory, the capital was moved back to Angkor, and Kokor was slowly reclaimed by nature. What was it like to live in this bustling capital, only to see it abandoned? The jungle holds its secrets tight. Our next destination takes us to the vast, arid landscapes of southern Africa, to the border of South Africa and Botswana. Here lie the ruins of the kingdom of Mapundubu. Thriving between the 11th and 13th centuries, Mapundubu was the center of the first kingdom in southern Africa. Its society was highly stratified, with the elite living on top of a sacred sandstone hill, separated from the commoners below. This physical separation reflected a deep social hierarchy. Archaeologists here made a stunning discovery: a royal burial site containing objects of incredible wealth and artistry. The most famous is a small, beautifully crafted golden rhinoceros, made from gold foil tacked onto a wooden core. There were also glass beads from India and porcelain from China. This tells us that Mapundubu was a major player in a vast international trade network that stretched across the Indian Ocean. They traded local gold and ivory for exotic luxury goods. But like our other forgotten cultures, Mapundubu's power waned. Climate change, shifting trade routes, and the rise of new powers like Great Zimbabwe led to its decline. For over 700 years, its existence was largely forgotten, until its rediscovery in the 1930s rewrote the history of the region. Finally, let's sail to the most remote inhabited island on Earth, Easter Island, or Rapa Nui. We've all seen pictures of the colossal stone statues, the moai, but the story behind them is one of ingenuity, obsession, and ultimately, collapse. The Rapa Nui people, who arrived around 1200 AD, developed a complex society in complete isolation. Their crowning achievement was carving and transporting these massive moai, which represent deified ancestors. Some weigh over 80 tons. How did they move them without wheels or large animals? It remains a subject of intense debate, but it was an incredible feat of engineering and communal effort. However, this obsession came at a cost. To transport the statues, it's believed they cut down nearly all the island's trees, leading to catastrophic soil erosion. Without trees, they couldn't build sturdy canoes for deep-sea fishing. Resources grew scarce, leading to warfare and societal collapse. When Europeans arrived in the 18th century, they found a small, struggling population and hundreds of toppled statues. The story of Rapa Nui is a powerful, cautionary tale. It's a microcosm of what can happen when a society overexploits its environment. The silent, staring moai are a haunting reminder of a brilliant culture that pushed its limits too far. From the stone homes of Scarabray to the cliff palaces of Mesa Verde, from the jungle temples of Kukur to the golden rhino of Mapundubu and the solemn moai of Rapa Nui, these forgotten cultures have so much to teach us. They show us the incredible diversity and creativity of the human spirit. They demonstrate our ability to adapt and thrive in the most challenging environments. But they also serve as warnings. They remind us of our fragility, of the delicate balance between society and nature. These are not just ruins. They are libraries of human experience. Standing in these quiet places, we're not just looking at old stones. We are connecting with our distant ancestors, feeling the echo of their lives, their triumphs, and their struggles. It reminds us that our own bustling civilization is just one chapter in a much, much longer story. The tales may be tranquil now, but their lessons resonate louder than ever. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through time. What forgotten culture fascinates you the most? Let me know in the comments below. Ever wondered what it would be like to wake up as the most powerful woman in the Eastern Roman Empire? Forget fairy tales. Being a Byzantine empress was a full-time job of power, politics, and incredible luxury. Let's step back in time and live a day in her shoes. Your day begins before sunrise in the Great Palace of Constantinople, a sprawling complex of halls, churches, and gardens overlooking the Sea of Mud. You're not woken by an alarm, but by a gentle chorus of court eunuchs, your most trusted servants. As you stir, your ladies-in-waiting, all from noble families, are already busy. They draw you a warm bath, infused with rosewater and aromatic herbs. Your every need is catered to, but privacy is a luxury you rarely have. After your bath, it's time to get dressed. And this isn't just picking an outfit. This is a ceremony. You are a living icon, and your appearance must reflect the glory of the empire. Layers of silk, heavy with gold and silver thread, are carefully draped over you. Your gown is likely a deep Tyrian purple, a color reserved exclusively for royalty. So expensive it was literally worth its weight in gold. A magnificent jewel-encrusted collar, called a maniakis, is placed around your neck. Pearls, sapphires, emeralds, and rubies glitter from every surface. Finally, the heavy imperial crown, the stemma, is set upon your head. Getting dressed is a workout in itself. Now, you're ready for the first public duty of the day. Morning prayers. You don't just walk to the chapel, you proceed. Flanked by guards and courtiers, you move through corridors lined with shimmering mosaics depicting saints and emperors. Every step is choreographed. In the palace chapel, you join the emperor for the morning liturgy. Your piety is on full display. Religion wasn't just personal faith. It was a cornerstone of imperial power. Being seen as a devout Christian was crucial for your legitimacy. After prayers, it's time for breakfast. This is a relatively simple affair. Perhaps some bread, cheese, fruit, and watered-down wine, but it's often a working meal. Here, you might meet with the emperor to discuss the day's politics. Who needs a promotion? Which foreign diplomat is arriving? What's the latest gossip from the Senate? Though you held no official political office, your influence was immense. You were the emperor's closest advisor, his confidant, and often, the true power behind the throne. Your opinions could shape policy and decide the fate of powerful men. The late morning is dedicated to your own court. As empress, you had your own household, your own budget, and your own retinue of officials. You'd meet with your treasurer to manage your vast estates, which generated enormous income. This wealth wasn't just for personal shopping sprees. You were a major patron of the arts and the church. You'd review plans for a new monastery. You were funding or commission a beautiful illuminated manuscript. Your patronage was a way to display your piety and wealth, further solidifying your status. You also acted as a judge. Petitions would be brought to you from all corners of the empire. A widow seeking justice, a merchant with a dispute, or a soldier asking for a pension. Your rulings carried significant weight. This was a critical part of your public image, showing you as a compassionate and just mother to the empire's subjects. Empresses like Theodora and Irene were famous for their sharp legal minds and their dedication to helping the common people. Lunch is the main meal of the day and a much grander affair than breakfast. You dine with the emperor and high-ranking officials in one of the palace's opulent dining halls. The table is laden with exotic dishes. Roasted peacock, fish from the Black Sea, elaborate pastries, and fruits from distant provinces, all served on solid gold plates. But even here, you're not just eating. This is diplomacy. You're observing the court, gauging alliances, and making small talk that could have huge political consequences. A kind word to one general, or a cold shoulder to another, could send powerful ripples through the court. The afternoon might offer a rare moment of relative quiet. You might retire to your private chambers to read. Many empresses were highly educated, fluent in Greek and Latin, and well-versed in history, philosophy, and theology. Or perhaps you'd spend time with your children. Ensuring the succession was your most vital duty. Educating the future emperor or empress was a project you personally oversaw. This wasn't just about teaching them to read. It was about teaching them how to rule. But don't get too comfortable. The afternoon could also be filled with public ceremonies. Perhaps you'd attend the hippodrome to watch the chariot races. When you appeared in the imperial box, the kathisma, tens of thousands of citizens would roar your name. Your wave, your smile, your very presence was a performance for the masses. A way to connect with your people and reinforce their loyalty to the dynasty. These events were often tense, as the hippodrome was a hotbed of political factions and could easily erupt into riots. As evening approaches, the palace prepares for the evening reception or state banquet. This is the peak of imperial spectacle. You change into another, equally breathtaking gown. Foreign ambassadors, generals, and the cream of the Byzantine aristocracy gather. Music from lutes and organs fills the air. The emperor and empress sit on elevated thrones, godlike figures presiding over the event. Your role here is to be the perfect hostess, graceful and regal, embodying the sophistication and power of the Byzantine court. You might receive a delegation from the Caliph of Baghdad or a Viking prince from the north. Your interactions with them are a delicate dance of diplomacy. After the guests depart, you finally return to your chambers. The heavy crown is removed. The silk robes are taken away. Another day of performance is over. But even in the privacy of your bedroom, you are rarely alone. Your ladies-in-waiting are there, and the emperor will likely join you. The night is not just for rest. It's for private counsel, for strategy, and for the continuation of the dynasty. Life as a Byzantine empress was a gilded cage. It was a life of unbelievable wealth and ceremony, but also one of constant pressure, danger, and duty. You were a wife, a mother, a diplomat, a politician, a judge, and a living symbol of an empire that saw itself as the center of the world. It was a role that demanded incredible strength, intelligence, and a will of iron. A truly extraordinary existence. Have you ever wondered why sidewalks are the way they are? Who decided how wide they should be, where they should go, or even that we needed them at all. It seems so obvious now, but the humble sidewalk has a surprisingly long and messy history. Today, we're retaking a walk through time to uncover the story of how our pedestrian pathways came to be. Let's rewind way back. Ancient cities, like those in the Roman Empire, actually had raised walkways. Pompeii is a fantastic example. You can still see the high stone curbs and large stepping stones that allowed people to cross the street without stepping into, well, let's just say the streets were also the sewer system. It was a practical solution for keeping your feet clean and dry. But after the fall of Rome, this kind of thoughtful urban planning pretty much disappeared for over 1,000 years. For centuries, European and early American cities were chaotic. Streets were shared spaces for everyone. People on foot, horses, carts, merchants selling their goods, and all the mud and waste that came with them. There was no dedicated space for pedestrians. Walking was often a dangerous and disgusting experience. If you were wealthy, you might travel by carriage or have servants clear a path for you. But for most people, it was a free fall. The big change started in the 17th and 18th centuries, especially in rapidly growing cities like London and Paris. As these cities became more crowded and commerce boomed, the chaos became unbearable. The idea of separating different types of traffic began to take hold. Paris started installing raised stone pavements, and London followed with the Paving and Lighting Act of 1766. This was a game changer. For the first time, city governments were systematically creating dedicated, paved spaces for people to walk, separate from the messy, horse-drawn traffic. It was a move towards order, safety, and public health. This trend crossed the Atlantic to the burgeoning cities of the United States. In the 19th century, American cities began to mandate sidewalks, but it was a slow and inconsistent process. Early sidewalks were often built by individual property owners, not the city. This meant you could be walking on a nice, smooth brick sidewalk in front of one house, and then suddenly drop onto a muddy patch or a rough wooden plank in front of the next. There was no uniformity in material, width, or height. It was a patchwork quilt of pedestrian infrastructure. The material used was also a big deal. Wood was cheap and common, but it rotted quickly and became slippery. Brick was more durable but expensive. Then came stone, like granite or bluestone, which was the premium choice for wealthy neighborhoods. The real revolution, however, was concrete. With the invention of Portland cement in the mid-19th century, concrete became an affordable, durable, and smooth option. By the early 20th century, it was the gold standard for sidewalks across the country, creating the familiar gray ribbons we know today. As cities grew, so did the regulations. Officials started to standardize things. How wide should a sidewalk be? A common standard became 5 feet, supposedly enough for 2 people with umbrellas to pass each other comfortably. What about the slope? It needed to be gentle enough for easy walking, but steep enough to drain water. And who was responsible for repairs? This is a debate that continues to this day in many cities. Is it the homeowner's job to fix a crack, or the city's? These regulations were all part of the City Beautiful movement and the rise of modern urban planning, which saw well-designed public spaces as essential for a healthy, functioning society. The mid-20th century brought a new challenge: the automobile. As cars took over, cities were redesigned around them. In many new suburban developments, sidewalks were seen as an unnecessary expense and were simply left out. The focus was on driving, not walking. This created car-dependent communities, where walking to a park, a friend's house, or a local store became difficult or impossible. But the story doesn't end there. In recent decades, there has been a powerful pushback. Urban planners and community advocates have recognized the immense value of walkability. Sidewalks are now seen as crucial for public health, encouraging physical activity. They're essential for community, creating vibrant streets where neighbors interact. And they are a matter of equity, providing basic mobility for those who cannot or choose not to drive. This has led to new laws and initiatives. The Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, or ADA, was a landmark piece of legislation. It mandated that sidewalks be accessible to everyone, leading to the installation of curb cuts, tactile paving for the visually impaired, and rules about maintaining a clear, unobstructed path. Cities are now actively retrofitting old neighborhoods with new sidewalks and implementing complete streets policies that aim to make roads safe and accessible for everyone, pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers alike. So, the next time you step out your door and onto the pavement, take a moment to appreciate it. That simple strip of concrete is the result of thousands of years of trial and error. It represents a long struggle for safety, order, public health, and social equity in our cities. It's a testament to the ongoing effort to make our urban spaces more human. Ever wondered how people in the Middle Ages managed to feed huge populations without refrigerators or modern silos? It's a fascinating story of ingenuity and survival. Today, we're diving deep into the world of medieval grain storage. Grain was everything. It was bread, beer, and animal feed. It was currency. Losing your grain harvest meant starvation, so protecting it was priority number one. The biggest enemies: moisture, pests, and fungus. A single damp patch, or a family of rats, could wipe out an entire village's food supply. So, what did they do? Let's start at the farm level. A typical peasant farmer would store their grain right in their own home. They'd use clay-lined pits dug into the floor, woven baskets called granary baskets, or even just sacks stacked in a dry corner. Sometimes, they'd build a small, separate structure on stilts, called a staddle barn. The stilts, often topped with mushroom-shaped stones, were brilliant. They lifted the grain off the damp ground and made it incredibly difficult for rats and mice to climb up. But for the big stuff, the tithes paid to the Lord or the church, you needed something much larger. This is where tithe barns and monastic granaries come in. These weren't just barns. They were cathedrals of agriculture. Massive stone or timber structures with high-vaulted roofs designed for one thing: keeping grain dry and safe. The floors were crucial. They were often paved with stone or made of tightly packed earth to keep out ground moisture. The walls were thick, sometimes several feet thick, providing insulation against temperature swings. Ventilation was key to preventing mold. You'll often see small slotted openings high up in the walls of these barns. These let air circulate, carrying moisture away, but were too small for birds to get in. And of course, a good sturdy roof was non-negotiable. Inside these massive barns, the grain wasn't just piled up, it was often kept in wooden bins or bays to separate different types or qualities of grain. This also helped contain any potential spoilage to one section. Constant vigilance was the rule. People would regularly turn the grain with wooden shovels. This process, called aerating, helped it dry evenly and prevented hotspots where mold could start to grow. Let's talk pests. Beyond the staddle stones, cats were the medieval farmer's best friend. Every barn, castle, and monastery had a team of mousers on patrol. They were so valued that in medieval Wales, the law set a high price for a good cat. Traps were also used, from simple snares to more complex wooden contraptions. What about insects like weevils? This was a tougher battle. The main defense was keeping the grain as cool and dry as possible, as weevils thrive in warmth and humidity. Some historical accounts suggest they might have mixed the grain with ash or certain herbs that acted as natural repellents, though the effectiveness varied. Now, let's look at castles and cities. They needed to store enough food to withstand a long siege. Castles had dedicated granaries, often built into the most protected part of the keep. These were fortresses within a fortress. Some castles also had deep stone-lined cellars for storage. The cool, stable temperature underground was excellent for preserving not just grain, but other foodstuffs as well. Cities had public granaries. These were managed by the town council to ensure a stable food supply and to prevent price gouging during shortages. When a harvest was good, the city would buy grain and store it. When times were lean, they would sell it back to the public at a fair price. This was a form of social security, medieval style. The entire process was incredibly labor-intensive. Imagine carrying countless heavy sacks of grain up ladders, spreading it out, and constantly turning it by hand. It was backbreaking work, but it was essential for survival. One interesting technique, especially for long-term storage, was parching or roasting the grain. Gently heating the grains killed off insect eggs and reduced the moisture content significantly, making it last much longer. The downside was that it could affect the grain's ability to be used for seed or for brewing. But for making flour, it worked well. So, from the humble clay pit in a peasant's hut, to the towering tithe barns and secure castle keeps, medieval grain storage was a sophisticated system born from necessity. It was a constant battle against nature, requiring foresight, hard work, and clever design. These methods were so effective that many of these incredible tithe barns are still standing today, 1,000 years later, a testament to the skill and ingenuity of our medieval ancestors. Next time you see an old barn or a castle, take a closer look. You might just be looking at a key piece of technology that helped shape the course of history, one grain at a time. It really makes you appreciate that simple bag of flour you can pick up from the supermarket, doesn't it? Have you ever stopped to think about the humble shoelace? It's something we use every day, tying and untying it without a second thought. But this simple string has a surprisingly long and fascinating history. So today, Let's unravel the story of the shoelace. Where did it come from, and how did it become the universal fastener we know today? Our story begins long before what we'd recognize as modern shoes. Thousands of years ago, early humans needed something to keep their rudimentary foot coverings, which were often just pieces of animal hide or woven plant fibers, attached to their feet. The earliest evidence we have comes from the Ereniwan cave in Armenia. In 2010, archaeologists discovered a perfectly preserved 5,500-year-old leather shoe. And guess what was holding it together? A leather lace, threaded through simple eyelets. This incredible find, known as the Ereniwan shoe, proves that the basic concept of lacing has been with us for millennia. Similarly, the famous Ci the Iceman, who lived around 3300 BC, was found wearing complex shoes made of deerskin and bearskin, stuffed with grass for insulation. His shoes were secured with laces made from lime tree bark. These early laces were purely functional. Their job was simple: keep the footwear on the foot. There was no thought of fashion or style. It was all about survival and practicality. For centuries, this remained the status quo. While footwear evolved, the lacing systems were pretty basic. The ancient Greeks and Romans wore sandals with intricate leather straps that crisscrossed up their legs. These were a form of lacing, but they weren't the shoelaces we use today. In medieval Europe, buttons, buckles, and clasps became the preferred methods for fastening shoes and boots, especially among the wealthy. Laces were seen as more common, used by peasants and soldiers for their simple, sturdy footwear. They were functional, but not fashionable. So when did the shoelace, as we know it, finally get its big break? The turning point came in the late 18th century, specifically on March 27, 1790. On this day, an Englishman named Harvey Kennedy was granted a patent for his invention, the aglet. An aglet is that little plastic or metal tip at the end of a shoelace. It might seem like a tiny detail, but it was a game changer. Before Kennedy's invention, people struggled to thread flimsy, fraying cords through the eyelets of their shoes. It was a frustrating and time-consuming process. The aglet made lacing shoes incredibly fast and easy. Kennedy's patent described his laces as attaching to shoes, boots, and other apparel, metallic and other tips, rendering them much more convenient and durable. He reportedly earned a significant amount of money from his invention, proving that sometimes the simplest ideas are the most brilliant. With the invention of the aglet, shoelaces were poised for a revolution. The timing couldn't have been better. The Industrial Revolution was in full swing, and factories were beginning to mass-produce clothing and footwear. This made shoes more affordable and accessible to the general public. At the same time, societal norms were shifting. The ornate, buckled shoes of the aristocracy were falling out of fashion, replaced by more practical, laced boots and shoes for both men and women. The 19th century became the golden age of the boot. From the sturdy work boots of laborers to the elegant ankle boots worn by Victorian ladies, laces were everywhere. They offered a snug, adjustable fit that buckles simply couldn't match. This period also saw the standardization of islets, the small reinforced holes in shoes. With machines that could quickly and cheaply punch and reinforce islets, laced footwear became even easier to manufacture. The military also played a huge role in popularizing shoelaces. Soldiers needed footwear that was durable, comfortable, and secure during long marches and in combat. Laced combat boots became standard issue, and the crisscross lacing pattern we're all familiar with became the norm for its strength and reliability. When these soldiers returned from wars, they brought their preference for laced footwear back to civilian life. By the early 20th century, the shoelace had conquered the world of footwear. But the evolution didn't stop there. The next big change was in the materials used. For centuries, laces were made from natural fibers, like leather, cotton, hemp, or jute. While functional, these materials had their drawbacks. Leather could become stiff and brittle, and cotton could rot or break when wet. The invention of synthetic fibers in the 20th century, like nylon and polyester, revolutionized the shoelace industry. These new materials were incredibly strong, durable, and resistant to water and abrasion. They could also be produced in a dazzling array of colors and patterns, turning the once purely functional shoelace into a fashion accessory. Suddenly, you could express your personality through your laces. You could have bright neon laces for your sneakers, patent laces for your casual shoes, or even sparkly laces for a night out. This brings us to the world of sneakers and athletic footwear. The rise of sports culture in the latter half of the 20th century created a huge demand for specialized shoes. Running, basketball, tennis, each sport required footwear that provided specific types of support and performance. Lacing technology had to keep up. shoe companies began experimenting with different lacing systems to improve fit and performance. We saw the emergence of variable width lacing, where the spacing of the eyelets changes along the shoe to accommodate different foot shapes. Then came gilly lacing, which uses loops of fabric instead of traditional eyelets to reduce pressure on the top of the foot. We also saw asymmetrical lacing, where the laces are offset to one side to follow the natural contour of the foot. Some companies tried to get rid of laces altogether. Remember the Reebok pump with its inflatable air bladder, or the Puma disc system, where you turn a dial to tighten internal wires. There were also shoes with Velcro straps, zippers, and slip-on designs. While many of these were popular for a time, none have managed to completely replace the classic shoelace. Why is that? The beauty of the shoelace lies in its simplicity and versatility. It offers an unparalleled level of adjustability. You can tighten certain parts of the shoe while leaving others looser. You can use different lacing techniques to relieve pressure points, secure your heel, or give your toes more room. There are dozens of ways to lace a shoe, each with a specific purpose. There's the runner's loop, also known as a heel lock, which prevents your heel from slipping. There's straight bar lacing, which creates a clean, stylish look for dress shoes. There's even a lacing pattern for hikers that helps relieve toe pain on descents. The shoelace is a simple piece of technology that gives the user an incredible amount of control. Today, the innovation continues. We have elastic laces that allow you to slip your shoes on and off without untying them. Perfect for kids, athletes in transition, or anyone who values convenience. There are no tie lacing systems like lock laces or hickeys, which use elastic cords and fasteners to provide a secure fit without the need for a bow. We even have high-tech laces with integrated Kevlar fibers for extreme durability, used by firefighters and industrial workers. Some companies are even exploring smart laces that can tighten or loosen themselves automatically. So, the next time you bend down to tie your shoes, take a moment to appreciate the journey of that simple string, from a strip of animal hide holding a prehistoric shoe together, to a patented, aglet-tipped marvel of the Industrial Revolution, to a colorful fashion statement and a high-performance athletic tool. The humble shoelace has a history as rich and varied as the shoes it secures. It's a testament to timeless design, a small but essential piece of technology that has walked with humanity for thousands of years, and will likely continue to do so for many more. Thanks for watching. If you found this story interesting, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more deep dives into the history of everyday objects. Let me know in the comments what you want to learn about next. See you in the next video.